Creating a staircase from old timber. Is it possible? Let's find out, shall we? So in the barn, there's stacks of old furniture, doors, wardrobes, things that have seen better days. And my thoughts were that I would utilise some of the better wood to try and create a staircase from scratch because the complexity of making the staircase for my particular situation, it was never going to be able to put a standard staircase in anyway, just because I didn't want to lose too much of the room if it was just going up in one direction, and also I didn't want to be cutting out lots of ceiling joists to accommodate the new staircase. So I'd already worked out that was going to be effectively you walk up a couple of steps, you turn, you walk up a bit more, you turn, and bump you into sort of the corridor in the for the bedrooms. So you having a good look round all the junk that I've got stuck in the barn, and there's various bits and pieces that I decided I could utilise. Sadly, not all of it was actual proper timber. So some of it is actually chipboard. So I've used the chipboard for the risers and timber for the treads. And it's a combination of old bits of old wardrobe, an old tabletop, and some large shelves that were in one of the wardrobes, and some other bits and pieces that I sort of found lying around. So get my, but when I was landscaping, I used to do a lot of back in the day. Did a lot of decking because it was sort of back in the 90s, and that it was very very fashionable. Everybody wanted decking, even if they're on level ground, they wanted decking. So invariably, we would build steps and stuff for the decking areas. This is just a bit kind of like following on what I did back then. So I've never actually built a staircase before, and I don't exactly know how you would go about it as someone that builds staircases would. So for me, it's just a question of trying to piece it all together and support it and see how we get on. And obviously, I can test it with my nearly 100 kilograms of weight bearing down on it. So that should be as good a test as any. So I've got the first couple of steps in, and then I'm sort of playing around with the quarter turns. I'm not overly happy with the second one, the way it works, but it is what it is. I can always possibly at a later stage rejig it to a degree, but these things are you kind of learning as you're going along when you're putting all this together. And plus, with all the materials that I'm trying to utilise and make sure it's well supported. The one good thing about the house is the house actually effectively an oak timber frame, so there's plenty of opportunities to fix into the oak to give the staircase some stability on the way up. And what I'll also probably do is put some brackets on the undersides of each of the steps later on, metal brackets, just to help, again, just to give it a bit more support. So I decided I could also utilise the timbers that I dropped from the ceiling, the kitchen ceiling. Some of them in the bathroom were quite thin. They were sort of, I don't know what, 7 or 8 inch by about an inch and a half. So something like 175 millimeters by 35 millimeters. And I thought they might make quite good. Create a couple of sort of treads with those. I don't know what the terminology is for it, to be honest with you. It's just the stuff we used, like I said, when we used to do the decking. We would make a frame sort of either side, and then put the decking boards to make the treads. And obviously, you didn't bother normally closing up the underside of it. It was all kind of very open. So I had a similar sort of thought with this. If I had a couple of lengths around about 2 and a bit meters that I could span to take the steps that go up against the wall that is on the sort of in front of me on the right hand side there, which takes the main bulk of steps. I think it takes 6 or 7 steps, and that gets you almost up to the bedroom height. And then you have your quarter turns to where you've effectively reverse in your direction to enter the corridor. So there you go. So here's one of them I brought in, and I'm just sort of playing around now to see whether this is going to be suitable. And the only downside is it's not actually could have done with being a lot deeper. Could have done with being something like 25 centimeters deep or 22 centimeters deep. It's quite shallow, which means that when I come to mark the risers and the treads, I couldn't if I marked them fully, I would cut entirely through these two boards. So what I've had to do is partially cut out the section, which means you have an area at the front that isn't cut out and hasn't got any support at all for the risers or the treads. But that it's not overly critical. Obviously, it would have been nicer. It would have been easier if they'd have been larger. So it's then a question of so you mark them off. So you need to have your perpendiculars and your horizontals, and this is what I've kind of done there. So I've marked the two of them. And you can see them; they're cut fairly close to the edge of the board. So there's not a massive amount of support there. So what I will do is I'll put additional supports directly underneath those where it meets the wall and on the other side with the newel posts, which are the big old oak rafters or ceiling joists that came out of the kitchen. The side where we had the cob on the tall sheet, and they're a bit banana shaped, but they're still very solid, and they'll work a treat, I'd imagine, to give a bit of support for the final ceiling joist, and also to give support for these two risers. So I'm just checking my measurements there before I crack on, and then it's a question of sort of putting them together, fitting them together. So I'll use some bits of timber to join them so that you've got a solid piece. And then it's a question of needing three hands when you've only got two hands, because you've got to then try and get it into a position where you can support it to start to fix it onto the wall or onto the newel posts. So first things first, put three supports in between the two sections. So one either end and roughly one in the middle, and that give me half a chance of offering the whole thing up as one unit, and then playing around with whatever I've got, maybe the step ladders or whatever, just to try and hold it in position while I can then try and fix it to the wall. So these are the times when it'd be superb if I had a little apprentice on site, or a labourer or somebody else just helping just for 20 minutes, just to give me a hand getting this fixed, because after that then should be all relatively straightforward. It's just a question of continually ripping down the risers, ripping down the treads, and fixing them sort of one by one as you go, and just checking your measurements. They're around about 80 centimeters wide, so that's something like what 2 foot 9 inches, or 2 foot 8 inches across in old money. And then the quarter turns, obviously, they're slightly deeper, but in some respects, but they're also slightly narrower in others. But it's a necessary evil, because I don't want to be. I've been in so many houses where you have to duck your head every time you go up or downstairs because there's a whacking great beam in the way, and that drives me insane. So, and I'm not overly tall. I'm sort of 6 foot tall, but I'm not so tall that should be a problem. I've even been in houses where you step down or you step up, You step over a little step and then you step down again and then you step back up to meet the staircase just to go back downstairs. It's insane. Some of these houses in France. Um, whatever were they thinking? I think a lot of it is where they're in the same position as me, where there hasn't been a staircase before, and the loft has just been the loft, and people have converted it. And because there's whacking great beams in the way, they've had to go sort of up and over, and then back down again to go back up again. So there's some wild creations out there, and hopefully mine won't be quite as wild as that. It'll just be a little bit of a mongrel, my staircase. So there you go. So now there's a new post there. I don't even know why I put the spirit level on it because it's it's as banana shaped as can be. It's not straight at all from start to finish. I think the weight bearing down over donkey's years, the ceiling, it just bowed. But it doesn't, for my purposes, it doesn't really matter. I'll still stick a level on it anyway to see where we are, get it roughly to where it needs to be, and then get some fixing. So what I'm doing is fixing it to the ceiling joist. You can see a part of the ceiling joist there, but you can't see the part that I'm fixing. As ever, my camera angles are all over the place. And then it's a question of, will it fit? No, it won't. So the old adage, isn't it? Measure twice and cut once. So I tend to measure once and cut twice. So it's a question of me deciding, am I going to cut into the newel post to accommodate the rail, or am I going to take the rail apart slightly and downsize the cross beams, which to me makes more sense ultimately. So I think that's what I'll end up doing, is take it apart slightly, cut down the supports, and then offer it up to the size that it needs to be, which I think was where it was meeting the newel post there. It was 78 centimeters, so it's just shy of, because the beam, nothing in here is square or nothing in here is square or straight in the house. There's not a straight wall. There's not a right angle in the house as such. So you cannot come in at all sorts of angles. Right. So I'm now toying with the idea what I'm going to do, and I've obviously decided what I'll do is I will take it apart, and I will, because it's going to be a whole lot easier than trying to saw into the newel post, which is a chunky bit of oak. Much easier just to quickly take the two risers apart and sort them out. And in the meantime, I'm just sorting out something with the top of the quarter, the quarter post there. So the riser was a little bit too long as well, I think. So then offering it again, and it's like all these things. This is because it's bespoke, because it's just something I'm making as I go along. You kind of it comes together bit by bit, and you do make a few mistakes here and there as you're going along, but there's nothing ever too critical. It's just, you need to try these things. You might anticipate that something's square and it isn't. You might anticipate that this size is good, but actually it's a little bit too big or it's a little bit too small. So um, it's just a question of, you just keep going with the head down, and eventually you sort of get there. So what I've done is I've just cut down the three supports, taken back 2 centimeters off each, and then put it back together as it was. So obviously I wasted 10-15 minutes there, but there's no great shakes. And then that will allow me to offer it up to the stairs, to the quarter steps, and the newel post, and see where we're at now. So hopefully this time um, it will go in. So just double checking my measurements, and then here we go, or not. Excuse me. Um, and need to I'll just trim that up a little bit more to get it to the right size. So that's going to accommodate one side of the riser. Right, so here we go. So using the step ladder there to act as sort of a balance, put it into position, see where we're at, see how it's looking. I need to then put put a bubble on it, put a spirit level on it, just to see where we're at. Otherwise, you can see if you're looking at the risers there, the top corner's missing. As I say, it just wasn't quite deep enough. In an ideal world, those all sealing joists would have been a wee bit deeper, few more inches, few more centimeters deeper, and then I could have cut the exact size out and had a bit to spare underneath. Whereas as it stands here, I think I've got about 40 millimeters underneath each one, which means I will have to support either side of it. Um, so just in case, well, you don't want to be in a position where you're walking down the stairs and some of the stairs collapses beneath you because some silly idiot's not put a sufficient support on. So, and it'll be me going up and down the stairs on a regular basis. So I will make sure it's all nice and solid by the end of it. So I'm now in a position where it's kind of holding there, and I can maybe get one or two fixings in, which will then put it. And I'm checking my level there. Yes, check my levels. Is that level? Yes, okay, not too bad. And then I can get one or two fixings in. Like I say, there are lots of, because it's timber framed. As you can see on the right hand side, you can see the timber frame is showing there. And then what I'm doing at the top, you'll see little battens appearing on the ceiling. That's where I can see from the kitchen side there are timber joists, timber horizontals. That means then I can just follow that line straight down and put a fixing in and know that I'm then fixing into timber and not just fixing into the cob, which obviously would give it no spuds at all. So I've got I've marked out three on the wall side that I can fix into, and then I can start getting a couple of fixings in on the other side, the side where it meets the newel post and the bottom of the quarter steps. So with that, then it's gone, and then I put a secondary newel in. Again, just to give it some support in that central section, and I will add some other bit, and I will add a strip underneath it as well. And then it's just a question of me, bit by bit, marking out each tread and riser to go into place. And they get screwed on. I'm not actually glued anything as such on this. It's just all been fixed by 50mm screws and 80mm screws for fixing into the timber frame. So we'll see how we get on with that. Because a lot of the timber that I've cut down had been varnished or whatever, so I wasn't sure the glue would hold particularly well anyway. Plus, I haven't actually got any glue on site, so that's another reason why I've not been gluing anything. Did used to have a big tub of PVA, but it's possibly still in Normandy or I have other tools. So that's kind of, you've got a feel for the look of the staircase there, and then obviously when you get to the top, you're going to have the quarter turns again, but it's going to turn in the opposite direction. So you're going to return back on yourself to work your way into the corridor where the bedrooms will be. So I think, for my mind, it's not looking too bad like that. I'm quite happy with the progress. I say it's a bit of a mongrel because there's all sorts of different timbers being used, but what will happen is it'll get sanded down and I'll put a stain on it, so it will all end up looking one. So it's really just a matter more at the moment being in a position where I've actually got a staircase that I can utilise from the inside and not have to keep going outside all the time and climb up a telescopic ladder to get me into the loft from the old loft access, which would be an absolute pleasure because obviously that's going to save time and effort as well, and everything will be at hand. So it's just me cracking on. This is the first day at it, so I'm fairly pleased with where I've got to with this. And you can see there's some fixings there at the back that I've put in. So there's a beam down below the first beam. You normally start the beams about 30 centimeters up, or about a foot from the floor, and then they run a beam across, and then it's framed from that. So I'll put some fixings into that, some timber supports there. and I'll do the same on the other side, but with a rail rather than with the down the upsides like that. Anyway, this is the first day at it. Hope you enjoyed this Heath Robinson approach to staircase building. And thanks ever so much for watching. And I shall catch you on the next one where hopefully we'll have it finished.